Hey guys, it's Ornlu, and well, surprise, surprise, we have another patch for AoE 2 DE. Just came out a little bit ago as I am recording this. So, welcome to the new update. It's just a small one with some balance changes and bug fixes. I would consider any patch that has balance changes in it to be fairly significant, but I guess content-wise it is fairly limited. The game no longer crashes while viewing the map pool screen. Wow. Lovely. Some Xbox changes. So that is going to be good. You can see that if you are an Xbox player. But here's the stuff that's going to be really interesting. There are some balance changes. I think almost all of them are in the form of nerfs, but they should be pretty interesting. So let's get right into it. So first we have the Siege and Armor Elephant. We have a couple changes here. HP is reduced from 200 to 180 for the Siege, or the Armored version, and then 250 to 220 for the Siege version. So the regular dropping by 20 HP, and the Elite one dropping by 30 HP. So that is a nerf to those Ram Elephants, but their Cavalry armor is increased a little bit. You get extra Cav armor, Elephant armor, but your Ram armor decreases. Now, all of that might sound a little confusing, but basically this makes Armored Elephants and Siege Elephants weaker against just melee units in general, but it sort of maintains the parity of, like, halbs, essentially. So pikemen are basically the same versus these Siege and Armored Elephants, but things like, cavalry, swordsmen, light cav, all that sort of stuff is going to be a little bit better. I guess they felt that the Siege Elephants were kind of overperforming versus just regular units. Oh, also villagers going to be doing better. So, yeah. Personally, I didn't really think the Siege Elephants were that big of a deal, but I honestly don't mind the changes too much. Now, to the Civ-specific ones, Bohemians, Hofnitsa, upgrade cost increased from 950 food 750 gold to 1100 food 800 gold, so that is, 150 food and 50 gold more. And the blast radius is decreased from 0.8 tiles to 0.7 tiles, so this is a nerf to the Hofnitsa. It's kind of interesting because Bohemians are kind of falling out of favor a little bit on closed maps, at least at the highest levels, but at the same time, this Civ has so many oppressive matchups on closed maps, and that is, of course, largely because of the Hofnitsa just being this sort of end-all, be-all unit in the late game. So I think this is good. I think Hofnitsa are still going to be insanely strong. They're just going to be a little bit harder to get to, and then even when you get to them, they're not going to be quite as good. For the record, regular bombard cannons have a blast radius of 0.5 tiles, so you're still getting, a 40% increase to your radius with the upgrade? So it's still a really good boost, but it's just not quite as good. But now you're going to be actually a fair bit smaller than the torsion engine blast radius. So the Ethiopians still have that little thing going for them. Burgundians, economic upgrade discount bonus reduced from 40% to 33%. So we're started at 50%, then it was bumped down to 40%, and now it's being bumped down further to 33%. Burgundians are absolutely insane on most maps, especially closed maps, and I think that, again, this just means you can't get those eco upgrades quite as early on, so good change for the better. Then, yeah, Burgundians are going to pretty much still be the same, just a little bit weaker. Gurjurs, elite chukram throwers now deal the intended 1 bonus damage versus condos. That's fine. Corrected some rounding errors with the bonus damage for some units. So, moral of the story is most of this is going to be, fairly similar. It's actually a little bit of a buff in most cases. I think the big one, though, is I think Castle Age camels now get 1 more attack versus other camels. So before, Gurjur's camels were only dealing 1 extra damage to other camels relative to, like, in a camel war, you were only dealing 1 more damage. Now I think you're dealing 2 more damage, if this is reading correctly. So that is actually a pretty significant change. But other than that, it's basically just a few rounding differences. Gurjurs are still going to be insanely strong. None of this really changes that. Hindustanis, villager cost discount reduced from 10, 15, 20, 25 per age to 5% less. So 5, 10, 15, 20. This is a pretty big nerf. This is a big nerf to Hindustanis. This is way back to launch Indians, like before HD or something like that. This is just going to make the Civ a little bit less... Well, okay, so it's still just as flexible and as well-rounded. It's just not quite as good in terms of just being able to do everything all at once. You're not going to be quite as able to just spam army and maintain villager production at the same time as you're typically able to do with the Civ. Your uptimes might be a little bit slower. It's just going to be a bit more difficult to afford everything at the same time. This is, I think, actually a fairly sizable difference. Your boom is going to be weaker in general. A well-warranted one, because I think Hindustanis were arguably just the best Civ in the game in, a general setting. So definitely a solid change, but a definite nerf to the Civ. And then Poles, finally, Folvark, instant food conversion decreased from 10% to 8%. Is 2% a big difference? It's hard to say. I know for a fact it's going to make figuring out how much food you get per farm really confusing now, because it's pretty easy to do 10%. It's not so easy to do 8%, at least for me. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a bit of a nerf to the pole eco. Again, the Civ is still going to be incredibly strong, and this is really it for the balance changes. The biggest nerfs are going to be to Hofnitsas and Hindustanis, I think. So Bohemians and Hindustanis, certainly very powerful civilizations. I mean, all of these civs are certainly top tier. And I think that, in general, they're still going to be quite strong. I don't think any sort of power ranking or tier list of these civs are really going to be bumped down. Maybe Hindustanis or Bohemians, but again, it's not too big of a deal, but I'm still glad that they're reining in some of these really, really powerful, DLC expansion civs just a little bit. So I think these are, for the, by and large, good changes. Modify attribute trigger effects, armor, and attack attributes, once again, function correctly. This is really important for custom campaigns. The things that I play on this channel all the time, where it would end up like massively nerfing units when it was supposed to buff units. That bug is now gone. So crashes and freezes, they are still looking at. And there are going to be many major updates to come. Our next patch will be small and focused on crashes. In the next patch, you can expect some more fixes and other early console improvements. And they are continuing to work on long-term updates to the game. And some of us are preparing for the console release. Others started work on the biggest content update in AoE 2 DE history. This update will bring the largest number of fixes ever seen in a single update, with a massive number of balance changes, quality of life improvements, and more. We also know that you're eager to hear more about Return of Rome, and we'll have more news on that coming in the coming months, so stay tuned. So, one, there is a huge patch incoming, which I know I am super excited to see. The single biggest update ever with massive balance changes. That's crazy. Also, the wording here. You also know that you're eager to hear more about Return to Rome, and we'll have more news on that in the coming months. So I think a lot of people were hoping that Return to Rome would be coming out in March, for like the Ides of March and stuff like that. It seems like this is going to be an early summer thing, just based on this wording. So unfortunate for people who are really looking forward to that, I think. But other than that, looking forward to that huge patch for sure. But that's going to be it for this update, guys. It is fairly small in terms of like number of changes, but I still think that, like I said at the beginning, any patch that includes balance changes, especially, nerfs to some top civs, I think that's going to be noticeable, especially for the multiplayer community. There we go. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely let me know what you think of these changes in the comments, and I'll see you all next time.